Welcome to Red and Yellow, the podcast about all things to do with refereeing at grassroots level, looking at the laws of football, speaking to guests, and trying to help you become a better referee, with Adam Humphreys and me, Ed Connell.
Hello, loyal listeners. It's Adam here, and I just wanted to get in early on this episode of Red or Yellow to remind you to please send in your questions about refereeing or anything you feel like you might need help with in terms of your game. That's why we are here, to help you improve to be a better referee. We really enjoy getting questions from our listeners as voice notes via email or DM or on social media. Being able to help you is why we created this podcast, and to offer our insights and to be able to help you by drawing on our experience. Added to that, if you are a very fit listener, then please don't forget to follow us on all the social medias. It's at Red or Yellow Pod. As well as remember to like and subscribe in your podcast feed. Thank you so much for being here, and let's get on with the show. Well, hello, Red or Yellow listeners. It's Adam here, and don't worry. Ed and I haven't split up. It's just been one of those months, stroke 2 months, stroke 3 months. And Ed and I were planning to record this morning, or this evening for him in the UK, but sadly he's had something come up that he's had to deal with. So I thought what I would do is I would jump on here and I would get through some questions and explain to you all what's been going on over the last few months as to why we've not really been able to sit down and record the podcast. But don't worry, we are still here. We are planning to keep going with the podcast, and we just thought it was fair and right that we reached out to you, all of our loyal listeners, because of how much you mean to us, and therefore how much we should just keep you updated with what has been going on. So first of all, let's deal with why we haven't recorded in a while. I think the last recording we did was when Mitrovic decided to assault a referee, and we just hadn't got around to dealing with it since then. And since then, he got banned. Since then, we had another assistant referee elbow a player, I think, or not. I don't know really what happened there. There's been a lot going on, and all the usual controversies, etc., with refereeing that always seems to happen in the Premier League. And we've also had release of VAR audios and stuff like that. So there's lots going on in the referee world, right? And it's all really interesting. But it just so happens all of this has coincided with life getting on top of Edward and I. Well, not really on top of Edward. Edward's been doing what Edward does, and he's been gallivanting around the world, enjoying holidays every which way but loose. All the while, I've been very busy refereeing, which has been good fun, and games are going quite well, which is nice. I've also been changing jobs, so I'm no longer working in the gym as a personal trainer, and I am now working for Football Queensland, which is going to be lots of fun as a referee development officer, and I am very excited about it. But inside all of that, I also bought a house, which is incredibly stressful and very tiring and has taken up a lot of spare time. And what else has happened? Oh, I also got my Australian permanent residency. So that's been going on as well. There's just been a lot. So, and obviously with the time difference and things like that, it's just difficult to squeeze in the time. However, with my new job, my time will hopefully be more available. Oh, I should also say Ed hasn't just been gallivanting. He's going to... he'll have a right go at me about saying that, because he has been working very hard as well. I know his job has been very stressful recently, so he's been doing that as well. And that's kind of all what's been happening. So I'm sure you understand and you're willing to give us some grace in relation to having not got an episode out for a while. And I do apologize. And I'm also really sad because I've seen some amazing posts from all of our listeners of like getting cup finals. And one of our listeners, she was the first female referee to referee a final on a league, which is immense. And I saw Ant Canavan, one of our other listeners. He's been promoted to level 4, which is amazing. Like loads has been going on in the referee space. And one thing I'm very excited about as well is A&H International is starting up again. So I spent all that time trying to get those flags. Well, now I have got the flags, but now I know I'll be able to get them again if I need them, which is great to see. That reminds me, actually, as well, as we're on the topic of referee equipment, we also have the 10% off at processports.com.au and at our UK store, which is therefereestore.co.uk. So don't forget you can get 10% off there as well. All you have to do is use the checkout code red or yellow 10. I believe it is. I haven't said that in a long time, so if I'm wrong, I do apologise. If I am wrong, just reach out to me and drop us a message on the grammar, and I will correct my mistake. Right, so that's all what's been going on. Yeah, it's been crazy. I also bought some new boots. I hope they come today because I've got a game tomorrow, quite a big game tomorrow, and my feet are killing me in my current boots. That's one thing. I'll tell you a funny story about that, actually, as I got you here. I remember I did a whole season wearing a pair of boots that were like half a size too small for me. And it kind of got to the end of the season. To say my toenails were not in the best shape would be an understatement. So I went to the doctor to get some, like, I don't know, foot fungal thing. This is a really lovely thing to be listening about, isn't it? And I could just hear Ed, like, as I'm doing this solo episode, I can hear Ed in like my head going, people don't want to listen to your foot fungus stories, Adam. Shut up. Anyway, I'm sure he's going to criticize me for saying this. But yeah, there is a point to this story. And I basically had to put on this thing that made my toenail die and then it grew back, which was horrible. So my point being, make sure you wear football boots that are always well-fitting, not too tight, because the amount of stopping and starting you do on the pitch and the amount of rotations you do, they will get chewed up. So make sure you've got appropriate footwear, please. Right. So I suppose that brings me on to questions for you all. So we did a little question box thing on Instagram, and we've still got like loads of historic questions to get through. So I'm going to just do my best, actually, which will be fun. So let's start with at pilgrim_try. And I looked up his name. I think it's JJ. So hello, JJ. Hope you're well. His question is how best to manage parents in youth football. Now, look, it's been a while since I've done youth football, I'm not going to lie. And I know Ed has regularly spoken about his experience in doing youth football and how he did one game and just decided to never do it again. I think it was one game. He didn't do many games. Basically because of the parents. It's not easy. I often find parents respond best based on how you treat their children, right? Which kind of makes sense. Now, don't get me wrong, I have had a couple of run-ins with parents, and I have had to, before, stop the game and remove parents from the side of the pitch because I thought they were being far too disruptive, swearing too much, etc., at their children. And sometimes you just have to stand your ground and say, no, I'm sorry. It's my job, my responsibility here is to protect these children. And that means to me, I'm going to protect them from hearing abusive language and protect their safety on the field. And if you're going to speak like that, I would like you to do it so that we can't hear you all the way over there. And if you don't move, I will just abandon the game. And believe me, that parent soon gets on their bike because, let's face it, they don't want to be the parent who stopped the game for all other 22 children, right? So you always have that up your sleeve. The other thing I would say, I'm going to go back to my first point about they respond best to how you work with their children. And do consider it work with their children because that's a really good way of looking at it. Now, whenever I referee children, I didn't really view my role as the referee. I kind of viewed my role as the coach of the laws of the game for the game, right? Now, this is obviously different depending on what age groups we're talking about. If we're talking about kind of like 15, 16-year-olds, they don't respond overly well to this kind of attitude. But if we're talking like juniors, like, 10, 11, 12, 13, then actually they do really respond really well. And don't referee those games like you're a Premier League referee or like you're refereeing an open age game. The way you want to referee that game is like you're just coaching the kids through it, right? So I'm always very vocal on the pitch. You only have to watch some of my videos on YouTube of games I do here, and you can hear me like astoundingly well. And the louder you are with the children, the better. So, for instance, like if they play a good pass, compliment the pass. Just make sure you do it for both teams all of the time. If they have a shot on goal and it nearly gets saved, have a chat with them. If a goalkeeper looks really upset that you let a goal in, go up to him, talk to him, and say to him, "It's okay. These things happen. You'll get the next one." Like, all I do when I'm refereeing children on the pitch is try and exude them with confidence. I just big them up as much as I possibly can. And look, if they make a foul, if they do something wrong, I rightfully call the free kick. And then I would just bring them over. I'd get down to their level as well. Like, that is so important because I'm 6'4". Like, I tower over players like men, let alone children. And then, if you blow a foul and you're kind of over them, it doesn't look good, right? So blow a foul, and then if you want to talk to the player, say, "Oh, do you mind coming here?" And then just kneel down, get down to his level. Another thing I've always found really useful, just having a sip of coffee. Another thing I've always found really useful is foul throws. Now, children don't really know how to throw the ball in, right? Like, they're just not going to know how to do that. That's one of those things. So what I would do is I would let them take the throw, and if it looks awful, I'd blow my whistle and I'd let him have another go. I'd walk up to him, I would say, "Look, buddy, why don't we try it like this? Why don't we want to get the whole ball behind the head, and I want you to try and keep both your feet on the line." And then he'll do it. And then you just play on from there. And people love that. They love the fact that you're being human to children who are learning. And I think that is really important. And as parents see you behave that way, as opposed to see you behave like a referee, then everything gets better. Like I say, there is an age limit upon which you can do this. But, I think probably like 12, 13 is probably the max, because at some point they need to be educated properly. But I do think, and also I think like stamping out swearing, like I do that very strongly with children. And I explicitly say to them, even if they are like 13, 14, I just say to them, "How old are you?" It was like 13. I'm like, "You will not speak on this pitch in that way amongst other children. Cut it out. I don't want to hear it again." And I say it very loudly. And you know what? Parents respond really well to that because they like the fact that you're not going to allow swearing on the pitch in front of their children. Now, if the parents are doing it, you have a right to say, "Look, you've heard me speak to the players about it. What are you doing? Why are you not leading by example? I'm trying to set a standard here. I would like you to follow, please." And then if they get uppity about it, just tell them to bugger off. That's generally how I would deal with it. I do think that attitude of coaching players is really important, of not getting into the tit for tat about how many fouls, how many free kicks, this, that, and the other. Allow players, especially younger players, grace to make mistakes. And then just balance it up. Just be like, "No, it's okay. Yeah, it's a foul. That's fine. Don't worry. It's a free kick. Let's go." Don't get dragged into the deluge of giving out cards for no reason or booking younger players and stuff like that. They don't need it. They just need a chat. They just need the education. And then the next time that player goes into a tackle, be like, "Be careful, Billy, be careful. Remember what we spoke about?" All of that. And you will be amazed. You will be astounded how much that child improves his game under your tutelage like that. Now, you may well have someone come up to you and go, "You shouldn't be coaching kids. You shouldn't be doing this. You shouldn't be doing that." And I'd just personally tell them to get lost if they said that to me, because I just look at them and go, "Look at the impact that had on the child." The child felt so much better about playing the game. That was my goal. My goal was to make sure that all the kids had a great game out there, And I believe they did with that attitude in place. So thank you for your opinion, but it's not welcome here. Good luck with the next one and move on. And that is generally how I would deal with parents in youth football. It isn't an easy situation, full stop, but experience helps massively. Right. Okay. So our next question is from Kian. Hey, Kian. Hope you're well. I think he had a final appointment. I can't remember. It was a long time ago. But if you did, Kian, well done. I hope it went well. And good stuff. Right. Hi, Adam stroke Ed. I love the fact I'm first. Was just wondering for your next podcast episode if you could touch on what to do if your appointed referee pulls out of a game and a manager steps in and cheats. I was not appointed to any game that day, so I went and ran the line. We had 2 qualified refs stood at the side of the pitch, and he was still adamant on doing it. He even overruled one of my offside decisions, which resulted in his team's first and only goal. Very interesting. Now, if you're not the appointed referee to the game, I'm not sure what your jurisdiction of power is here. All I do know is that if a referee gets injured in a game, you go to the touchline and you ask who is a qualified referee. And then what you do is you rotate in terms of seniority. So say the referee in the middle gets hurt, and then, like one of the subs did his referee course when he was like 10, you appoint him to the line and one of the assistants goes into the middle. Essentially, if there's a qualified referee willing to do the game, I would suggest the qualified referee should do the game. And I think that should probably be, you should probably like create a coalition of consensus. By that I mean get the captains together, get the managers together, and if 3 out of 4 say, no, we want the qualified referee to do the game, then that automatically diminishes that guy's power in doing it himself. It's not easy. The fact you wasn't appointed to the game to begin with and you ran the line, I mean, look, it's not great, right? Like generally, because you wasn't appointed to the game, it's technically not your game, but then it's also technically not his game. So I'd always argue like what's best for football, and clearly what's best for football is having a qualified referee be the referee. But having that argument with a fully grown adult when you're not a fully grown adult, if you're not a fully grown adult, Kean, I can't remember, is not great. It's not easy. It's not the best. What I would do is probably the best situation aside from trying to create a coalition of consensus, I really like that phrase, would be just write a report after and just send it into County FA and just be like, so I went to run the line for my friends or for this game, whatever. The referee didn't show up, and I said I was willing to referee the game. Then what happened was the manager of one of the teams decided to referee, even though he wasn't a qualified referee when I asked him. And he then, I would then call into question his independence for managing that game. If you could please remind the manager or the coach of his responsibilities to football, in the sense that if there is a qualified referee available, the qualified referee should be therefore doing the game if he is willing and able. Maybe if you could write a letter to him and remind him of that position, it would be much appreciated. Thank you very much. Something like that to County FA, and I'm sure County FA would respond, because it only causes more problems for them, right? If we end up getting lots of biased coaches and managers being referees. One thing I would say is I would hope the manager figured out how difficult a job it is, and hopefully next time we'll have a bit more grace with the referees that do that. Overruling your offside, that's just inexperience from a guy in the middle who thinks he knows best, and he's clearly an ignorant person. So I wouldn't overthink it, buddy, and I'm sorry that happened to you. It's not easy, but it's one of those things, and it does occur sometimes. So yeah, there's not a lot you can do, I don't think. Right, David Masters. Hello, David. Sorry, I've got to say hello. When does shielding the ball actually become a foul? Stepping across an attacker, for example. I think this is that's a really good question. I'd have to look this up fully. My understanding of it is that it all comes down to whether the ball is in a playable distance or not. Obstruction isn't a. Sorry, I was having a sip of coffee. Obstruction isn't in the laws of the game anymore. But in terms of shielding the ball and protection of the ball has to be within a playable distance to the person who has possession. And therefore they then have a right to maintain possession. If the ball isn't in a playable distance to that player with possession, then obviously he doesn't have possession, and therefore shielding the ball then becomes a foul against him. If there's contact involved, it would then be a direct free kick. If he's kind of done it without contact, so if he plays in a dangerous manner, impedes the progress of an opponent without any contact being made, so if he just kind of like cuts across him without any contact, is guilty of dissent, obviously prevents the goalkeeper from releasing the ball, this whole thing, or initiates a deliberate trick for the ball to be passed, or commits anything else that isn't under anything, you give an indirect free kick. So under this question, I'd probably say it's impeding the progress of an opponent without contact or playing in a dangerous manner by kind of like standing in the way of someone who's trying to get the ball. So I've always looked at it like that. I've always looked at it in terms of the ball has to be within a playable distance. Like I say, yeah, that's generally that. I would say that is generally the best way in which to manage that situation. Yeah, that's a great question. I'm just trying to think if there's anything I've missed on that. When does shielding the ball actually become a foul? Stepping across an attacker, for example. Yeah, no, I think we've covered it there. So just bear that in mind. Bear in mind how close the ball is to the guy who's trying to shield the ball. Bear in mind how much contact is made. And just bear in mind whether you think. Also, one thing I like to do in this situation as well is if, like, let's take the classic example of someone's run the ball into the corner because they're trying to wind down the clock because they're 1-0 up or whatever. And no good ever comes from those situations, like ever, okay? Because you've got one guy with his back to the entire pitch. You've got an angry centre forward running in at full pace, and he's going to clean someone out. And when he cleans someone out in that situation, you're going to have a bigger problem to deal with. So what I would say is, don't worry too much. I didn't say this, but don't worry too much about whether there is contact, whether there's not contact or whatever. Just get in there and find something. There will be a shirt pull. There will be two players jostling. Just blow your whistle, get it out of the and just give a free kick defensively. Away you go. Because it stops the bigger problem. So it's all about proactive refereeing. And that would be really, really good for you. So just bear that in mind as well. Karwan Ramazan has asked, what is one thing that makes a good elite referee? I don't know. I'm not an elite referee, so I don't know. When I watch elite referees, I'm not sure really. It's a very good question. I'd probably say, trying to think back. Like, I'm thinking back to the World Cup and the little bits of it I did watch. I thought the American guy was really good, but I can't really remember why. I think he just looked quite personable. It's striking that balance between being personable and being able to work with all of the players. Being able to manage the event is incredibly important, and and also being diligent in your job in terms of the laws of the game. I think the higher you get, the laws of the game kind of, I don't want to say matter less, because they matter more, obviously. But I feel like it's not as much of a significant part of what you're doing other than really for that kind of 90 minutes. The whole time you're having to manage the big event, right? You're in charge of the event of football. And that has loads of other responsibilities. And within managing the event of football, obviously the laws of the game are a massive part of that. But I do think people who are coachable is always a good thing. You don't get to become an elite referee without being able to take feedback, constantly being able to work on your game, constantly looking after yourself, viewing yourself as an athlete. And all elite referees that I've come across have been amazingly, wonderfully kind people. I'm thinking back to my coaches who both have FIFA badges. One of my colleagues, she has a FIFA badge. She's just so kind and loving and wonderful, and gives you great grace within that, which is nice. And I think they have a deep passion about the game. Obviously, you wouldn't do it for so long and get so far and have to sacrifice so much of your life for it without that as well. And I think that's very important. And they have a great moral compass, and they just always look for balance in everything they do, which is really important. I think is probably it. If there's any elite referees listening to this, Alex, Misuk, drop me a message and let me know what you think of what makes a good elite referee. Or, if you're a listener and you think you know what makes a great elite referee based on what you've seen and your experience, it'd be great to find out, if you're working with Premier League refs or Football League refs. One of the greatest moments of my refereeing sort of life was with a guy called Rob, who became a dear friend of mine. He's an assistant referee on the Football League. And when he was doing that, he was still having to do middles on the leagues that I refereed. And I was assisting him one day. So, here I am as an assistant. And this was when I was quite new to being a level 4, actually. There I was being an assistant. And I'm like, God, I'm assisting a guy who does this, at, some of the biggest stadiums in the country. And and he taught me a great lesson in refereeing. I cocked up, basically. I gave a corner when it was clearly a goal kick, and I was the only person who thought it was a corner. And he went with me, right? He didn't overrule me because he didn't want to undermine my authority. And then the corner came in, and he just found a foul and got out. And I've never forgotten that lesson. And I think it's just things like that, it's knowing the underside of the game. It's knowing how to dig yourself out of holes that you might end up in, and managing these issues and these problems very well. You have to be a great man manager. All these kinds of things that really go a long way to making great elite referees. Yeah, I hope Rob listens to this. I haven't spoken to him in a while. Hey Rob, if you are listening. Another great question here. What should you do when 5 or 6 players come towards you screaming all at once? Really great question. I always think back to Andy D'Urso. I'm not sure if you know who Andy is, but he was a Premier League referee sort of in the mid to late 90s, early 2000s. And I remember once he was refereeing at, you can Google it, and it's you see it on YouTube, Andy D'Urso referee, D''URSO. And he was refereeing, where was he? He was at Old Trafford with Manchester United. It was Roy Keane's Manchester United. And I can't remember who they were playing against, Sheffield Wednesday or someone maybe. And he gave a penalty. And I'm pretty sure the penalty was the correct decision. And I think it had quite huge consequences, whether Man United drew or won this game or something. I can't remember the finite details. And that, you see Roy Keane coming at him. And I think Paul Scholes might be there or whatever. And they just all come at him. And he starts backpedaling. So he just gets on his bike and starts running away. And to the point that he's so focused on Roy Keane screaming at him, over sort of 60, 70 yards of movement, he just keeps backpedaling, completely loses his bearings, and ends up in the boardings, the sponsorship boardings on the side of the pitch, and trips over that. And yeah, bless him. I've only met Andy once, and I didn't get a chance to speak to him. We was just chatting casually about refereeing. I didn't get to talk to him about that moment, but it must have been pretty intimidating and pretty scary. But he did the right thing. The only thing you can do is create distance, right? I see a lot of younger referees. I've been doing some assessing and stuff recently, which is great fun, and I do enjoy it. And when they do that, like when a big moment happens, what happens is the referee kind of gets drawn into where all the players are. Whereas actually the most useful thing you can do is come away from that moment. So say you give a controversial foul or something. I know you have to mark where the foul is, but if there's a lot of dissent, you can mark the foul whenever. You don't want to forget roughly where it is. No one cares that much about, whether it's on the exact blade of grass or whatever. So you don't have to go towards it. Or a penalty is a great example because the spot is there, right? You know exactly where it is. And when you give something like that, there's normally a lot of dissenting voices or a lot of issues or a lot of people going, no, etc., etc. And so when that happens, what you have to do is I always create space. So if it's a penalty, I'll head over to the goal line and I'll just stand there, and anyone who wants to come and have a go at me can. But one, I will see them all walking all the way towards me, and so will all of the coaches, so will all of the managers, so will all of the stadium. And then when that happens and I produce a yellow card for dissent, or I produce a yellow card for him being too vociferous or anything like that, no one can be surprised because they're like, well, he walked 20 yards to shout at him. Of course he's going to book him. So it's all about creating distance. And when you give yourself space, you give yourself time. And when you have time, there's a beautiful quote I use with clients. It's just the most amazing quote in the world. And it's so true on the football field as well. And it's by a guy called Viktor E. Frankl. Viktor E. Frankl was a Holocaust survivor, and he created a form of psychotherapy called logotherapy. And he has a book called Man's Search for Meaning. And it's all about how in suffering we find our meaning for life, and how we can suffer and how that can enhance our understanding of who we are as people. It's very interesting. And in that, he has the most incredible quote. And the quote is this: "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space, we have the power to choose our response. And in our choice lies our growth and freedom." Let me say it to you again. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space, we have the power to choose our response. And in our choice lies our growth and freedom. Now, when you give yourself space, you also give yourself time. And I know you've already given the foul, that's fine. But what you're not necessarily giving yourself time here on the football field, you're giving the players time. You're giving the players time to calm down. You're giving players time to maybe see it more objectively. You're giving players time to organize themselves so that the captain comes to you and not 5 other people who are about to have problems. And that's really important. So when someone's coming at you, screaming and shouting at you, just think space and time. I've got to get myself out of here. I've got to give myself space and time. It's like whenever I give a foul and someone, or I don't, it's normally when I don't give a foul. When I don't give a foul and someone thinks it was a foul, and if I hang around and talk to them, no good's going to come from that conversation. I'm not changing my decision. He's not going to be able to make me change my decision, so he's going to get annoyed. So what's the best thing to do? I run away. And the more I run away, they then forget about it. And then if they choose to come up to you at half time, then that's fine. It can be probably a more calm conversation because so much more time has passed since the moment occurred. And that's all what's very important here. So just bear that in mind. It can be scary. It can feel unnatural as well, like you're running away from people. But generally, it's a good idea. So there's that as well. And that would be it. I think that's all the questions we have time for today on You Lucky. So listen, guys and girls and referees and people and everyone who listens, we haven't forgotten about you. Thank you so much for being here. We miss you as well. And I hope you haven't minded listening to my voice for however long this has gone on for. And I hope you found it useful. We will be back very soon, continuing with the laws of the game, continuing with Ed's fun facts. There will be normal service resumed very, very soon because my new job means I'll have a bit more time to do stuff, which opens up more window of opportunity between Australia and England for us to get the recordings done. We're planning on getting guests on once we get the laws done, and we're planning on all of this stuff. So, yes, there are a lot of future plans in place for the podcast, and we're very excited with which to do that. And yeah, just keep being awesome. Enjoy the ends of your season, because they must all be coming to a close now. And please, please, please keep sending us questions, because you are the fuel to our fire. I hope you have a great day. Ciao, ciao. Thank you for making it to the end of another episode of Red or Yellow. You're clearly a very fit listener. May I gently remind you to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Tell all your friends. And don't forget to please share it with any colleagues or refereeing groups that you may have. Good luck on the fields out there this week. And if you have any questions, please send them in to us. Voice notes can be sent to redoryellowpod@gmail.com, or you can contact us on social media. It's @redoryellowpod. Have the most wonderful day. Thank you so much for listening. Ciao, ciao.